Honor and privilege to share with you today. All right, so let's pray first. So Lord, I just give you this time, and Holy Spirit, we don't make room for you. We give you the room. We pray that your words, the words that you want me to say, are what comes out of my mouth today. Prepare the hearts, and Lord, just be with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hold that microphone a little closer.
Alright, this is only the third time I've done this, y'all, so just bear with me. My name is Amber Mills, and this is the story about what God has done in my life. 2 Timothy 1:8 says, "So do not be ashamed of the testimony about our Lord, nor me his prisoner. Rather, join with me in suffering for the gospel by the power of God." For me, getting in front of all you people is what I consider sharing and suffering for the gospel. I do not like the spotlight. When I was young, I went through things that taught me that the more attention or special treatment that you got, the more envy and rivalry stirred up in others. I was very comfortable being a chameleon and blending into the background. I was cautious and I was quiet. The enemy had stolen my voice. I rarely spoke up for myself out of fear. Some of the early details of my life that influenced the strongholds of thought that I had came from an abusive marriage my mother was in when I was a young child. Listening to her getting beat at night after the days when I had been a rebellious child caused me to internalize that I was the reason that people I loved got hurt. My mother tried to shield me from all that was happening in our single wide trailer by becoming an enabling and codependent parent. She tried to make up for the fact that her husband was addicted to crack cocaine and she would lock me in my room all day, every day, until she came home from work. There were times we fled and lived in battered women's shelters or jumped around staying with different family members, but mostly we ended up back at my grandparents' house. No one seemed to notice all that I was going through as a young girl, and to escalate my feelings of being unseen. My best friend and cousin, who was 2 years younger than me, was dying of cancer. I faced devastating loss as a little girl. As a young child, I even blamed myself for my 4-year-old cousin's death because of the immature words that I had uttered. I wish she would just die. You see, I was a child, I was suffering, and the enemy had whispered into my ear that it was all my fault. John 10:10 says, "This thief does not come except to steal, kill, and destroy. But I have come that they may have life, and that they may have it more abundantly."
Yeah.
At 7 years old, we lost our security, our home, our belongings. My best friend passed away. My voice was stolen, and I was full of self-hate. When I was 13, that's when things started to get out of control. I was labeled crazy, bipolar. I cut myself, I experimented with the occult, and I started doing drugs. I felt like I had found my people with the outcasts who were just as broken and as misunderstood as I was. At 13 years old, I was the last one of my friends to lose her virginity, and 2 weeks later I found out that I was pregnant. At that moment, my life drastically changed in ways I couldn't begin to fully understand. I was too young to get a job, but all of a sudden I had an immense amount of responsibilities and expectations on me without being taught how to properly handle them. So I did the best that I could, full of shame and being judged everywhere I went. I carried my baby to term and I tried to be a good mom. However, when I was prescribed Percocets after the C-section, there was an all too familiar feeling of comfort that washed over me. This began the cycle of addiction in my life all over again. You see, addiction ran in my family. It was common for all the men in my family to be drunk or stoned. Loud music, beer, poker, those were simply the things that adults in my household did. I resented how hard the women had to work in my family to take care of everything. I did not want to be like them. I met an older man who became the father of my second child. He was 22 and I was 14. I was constantly being told what I had to do with no resources or instructions on how to do these things. So I found a way out of my mother's house and got the freedom that I thought that I wanted. With that so-called freedom, I began drinking, selling marijuana, and taking prescription drugs. I became hooked on benzos and opiates by the age 18. My mom ended up picking up my two small children one day, and I was so naive at the time, y'all, I didn't even realize that I had rights to fight for at the time. But I also wasn't living in a stable situation, and I knew that they would be better off until I could figure out what it was that I needed to do. The shame that comes from not having your children with you as a mother is one that will cause an addict to plummet deeper into the throes of addiction. I did things that I was not proud of. I hung around with people who were as wise as serpents, and I was as young and naive yet too full of pride to see it. I was taken advantage of more times than I can remember. I met a man who told me that he could show me how to get sober and get my kids back. He manipulated me into marrying him on my 18th birthday, which is the day you don't have to have a parental signature. As soon as we were married, all of my hidden core beliefs about men and husbands resurfaced almost immediately. His method of showing me how to get sober was controlling and very abusive. The mileage on my car was calculated. I had to have receipts for every single purchase that I made. I was isolated from my friends, and I was even convinced at one point that he was going to kill himself and frame me for the murder. I was thrown around like a rag doll as I begged for him to stop. Then he would tell me that he loved me, and it just made him crazy when I wasn't being a good wife. He called me his trophy and said that his trophy could not be dusty or tarnished. After a couple of months of being in this commitment, he got violent when my children were visiting. I contacted an old friend, and I ran to her. I was done with men forever, and I decided it was safer to live a homosexual lifestyle. When I was 15, I had met this girl. She was gay, and we liked each other. But as teenage girls, we couldn't take care of the children that I already had, and we thought that now was our chance. From 18 to 22, I was highly intoxicated, not only with this woman, but with the lifestyle that we lived. I thought I had found acceptance by the outcast once more, and I prided myself on being the person that could get you what you needed when it comes to substances. I sold drugs, and we used drugs. I became just as addicted to selling as I did to using. It met a need in me to be needed by others and to provide what they sought after. My relationship with her had small periods of sobriety, so we had my children with us. However, the toxicity and brokenness of it all was like pouring gasoline on an open flame. We were highly codependent, and when she drank, things got really dark. She was a binge user, and I was one of those addicts who had to have something just to be able to function throughout the day. Due to this dynamic, I was treated as the problem. We broke up right at the same time that my mother had a bad car accident and had lost her job. I had nowhere to go, no place to live, and at this time I had to figure out how I was going to manage for myself and two small young children with no car, no job, no phone, and an addiction that came with severe withdrawals. I was 21 years old. And when I say severe withdrawals, y'all, I mean you can't function, you're sick, you're throwing up, you can't get through the day. I once heard an older woman say, if you're a good mama, you'll do what you have to do to make sure that your kids have food in their mouths and a roof over their heads. If that's selling a pill or even yourself, good mamas do what they have to do to make sure their kids are taken care of. This is the hardest part of my story to share, but it is the catalyst that enabled me to be where I am today. The hardest parts of our stories play a vital part in where God may want to use us later. There was a man I came in contact with who made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I couldn't refuse this offer because at the time I did not think I had any other choice. But the details of what happened next are not something that I can share here. But what I can tell you is what I went through damaged the way I felt about myself to my core and taught me the depths of perversion that really exist in this world. I came to believe that this world was a dark place. Shortly after this, I discovered something that changed everything to an even more destructive degree than what I've shared so far. I found a way to get off the pills as I was introduced to methamphetamines. Ecclesiastes 1:12-18 says, an experience of evil has God given unto man in order to humble him. I was addicted to many things, including doing things my way. I knew now that I had a problem with drugs because I'd gone to an AA meeting one time after almost overdosing, and I heard someone say that an addict won't quit until they hit rock bottom. So I intentionally went on a quest to find it. I was tired of hurting the people that I loved, but I could not bear the way it felt to be sober. I cut my hair short, I got pink highlights, I was homeless, I ended up in a hotel room in the middle of nowhere with a 48-year-old man who was paranoid, believed I was trying to poison him. I woke up to him staring at me, asking me if I knew the type of sentence attempted murder carried. And this hotel room was one of my first realized experiences with spiritual warfare. I got set up by my ex-girlfriend and sold pills to an undercover cop. This opened an investigation and they began watching me. This began my cycle with law enforcement. I went to jail and bought it out after 4 months. I used my first offenders and got 10 years on probation. I got a job at a call center, quickly became the manager of it, and regained custody of my kids. And then I got back into a relationship with the same ex-girlfriend whose sister had set me up. We did all right for a while, but God and recovery were not active parts of our lifestyle. The call center I was working at, selling electronic cigarettes, had been under investigation by the local narcotics agency. There were rumors that the shipping department manager had been smuggling my drug of choice out of the basement. I know that sounds far-fetched, but it happened. He took me under his wing and he wanted me to work for him. And then one day, there it was. I thought, surely, just this one time, surely I've been through enough for things not to get out of control again. Well, that's how the cycle goes. But I do feel led to share how deep things went before I was willing to take the suggestions I needed to take and to find a new way of life. My girlfriend left me, my mom took the kids again, the company I worked for shut down. I began working for the shipping department manager who was smuggling drugs across the border from Mexico when I reconnected with a girl I had met while I was in jail. She taught me everything that I needed to know about becoming a meth dealer. I'm going to fast forward to a time when I could not get this lady on the phone. Money was tight and people were waiting on me to come through with what I had promised them. By this time I was living in Dawsonville, Georgia, running a trap house. It was full of people that would steal your stuff and then help you look for it. When I finally reached this woman on the phone, I could tell that she was in trouble. She asked me to come get her, so to Kennesaw we went to pick up her and her boyfriend. But things were different this time. I immediately sensed that something wasn't right. I've always had a soft spot for helping females when they're in trouble. So I tried. But the next morning, my house was surrounded by law enforcement from 3 different counties, all working together to serve a no-knock warrant. They were looking for fugitives described in the news as armed and danger, as my friends were wanted for murder in Cherokee County, Georgia. Moments like these are when the world stops spinning. Fear and survival instincts overtook me. I was screamed at with a gun pointed in my face. I watched as the police dragged my friend across the ground and her boyfriend came out of the house pointing a gun at the officers. But this was still not the rock bottom that I had been desperately searching for. We're going to fast forward now. There have been several times in my life where the police have built cases against me. There have been deep, heart-wrenching betrayals of sexual immorality between partners I have been with and members of my family, including those that were underage. I've been slapped, choked, drugged, had videos taken of me without my permission, been set up, manipulated, controlled, used, exploited. I've befriended dangerous, criminally minded gang members. I've been in a high-speed car chase that ended in a wreck. I've had my house raided twice, and I was locked up for 23 hours a day for 4 months straight, and I had my children taken from me and put in foster care. None of those experiences were enough to make me stop using. They only fueled the lie that I couldn't cope with the reality that my life had become without drugs. But now I want to tell you a story about mercy and grace. Once upon a time when I was in jail, I noticed a few inmates with these green life recovery Bibles. Bibles, and I was drawn to them. I was told the only way that you could get one of those Bibles was to contact a group called Out of Darkness. It's a ministry that did outreach for survivors of sexual exploitation. I met with this woman that came to see me, and I told her quickly that I wasn't one of those girls. You see, I had prided myself on being the girl that sold the drugs and not the girl that sold herself for the drugs. But after she heard my story, we both realized that I indeed had been exploited many times in my past. The hardest, most shame-filled parts of my story became the very avenues for my healing, recovery, and ministry. Out of Darkness was made up of the kindest, most genuine people who radiated the love of Jesus Christ without judgment or condemnation. They were the first people that the Lord put in my path to love me when I thought that I didn't deserve it. James 1:5 says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives it generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." I spent 48 months of my life mandated to complete a faith-based discipleship program that was disguised as a rehab. The first time I was there, I got in trouble for asking a shopper for a cigarette, and they made me start my program over again on day one. But during this disciplinary conversation, the program director looked me right in the eye and told me what a great leader I was and all of the potential that he saw in me. I didn't understand. It took me a long time to receive love. The recovery program that I went through forced me to confront the things about my past that had shaped my belief system, and that was impacting the reality I was living out of every day. I came to realize that I was not a victim of my past, but I was living out the lies that the enemy had whispered into my ear. I was tempted to leave a lot of the details out of this that I've shared tonight because I thought they're not going to look at you the same way if they know how many times and how deeply you've messed up. But that's called shame. And shame is one of the biggest barriers that we all face. But it's when we do things like this and we shed light on what God has done in our life that shame dies and it can't grow anymore. Romans 8:1 says there is no condemnation for those who are in Jesus Christ. There's a difference between what you've done and who you are. I believed the lie that I had to find my rock bottom, but the truth is that I needed to realize when enough was enough to make me be willing to do whatever it took to heal, recover, overcome, and allow my mind to be transformed. Addiction isn't just a disease, it's a spiritual battle. Strongholds of the mind keep us in bondage until we surrender to the process that is designed to set us free. During one of my most selfish seasons of my life, after graduating my first recovery program, and then being on staff and relapsing and losing custody of my kids, I found myself at a new level of hell. I was injecting methamphetamines 2 to 3 times a day. I had to have something to function during the day and something to help me sleep at night. The shame was absolutely overwhelming because at this time I knew better, yet I still could not do what I knew I needed to do. The fugitive that I was dating at the time knew he was going to be going away for at least 5 years when they caught him. The same man who put a needle in my arm for the first time also intentionally got me pregnant, hoping that I would support him during his upcoming prison stay. I stopped selling, I weaned myself down, and I quit some of the other substances. At the time, I was going through so much, y'all. I knew what I needed to do, but I was so upset and so hurt that I couldn't even face myself in the mirror. I didn't believe in abortion, but I thought to myself, well, if I can't quit using, then this will be better. I thought about it, and I could never go through with it. I came in contact with other addicts who told me that they had used when they were pregnant, that their babies were fine. They also said that stopping altogether could kill the child. I had plans to quit, but they were delayed for much too long. I thank God that the house that I was living in got raided and that everyone on that property went to jail. So, I'm going to paraphrase here. Jonah 4:2 says, "When sinners turn to you and meet your conditions, you revoke the sentence of evil against them." I was being charged with serious felonies due to drugs, drug-related objects, and scales that were intentionally placed in the bathroom by a gang member at the house. He's no longer living anymore. So these charges were not mine, but they still resulted in the possibility of serious prison time. This was not my first violation with new charges, and I was not expecting any mercy. When I finally made it to the doctor, I found out that I was having a baby girl, but I was also told that there was something that was terribly wrong. My daughter had a condition called alobar-holoprosencephaly, which meant that her brain hadn't developed properly. Only her brainstem had formed. The rest of her brain was missing. The doctor said that this condition was uniformly lethal and that there was 0 chance of survival. They told me she most likely wouldn't make it to term, and if she did, she would probably be stillborn. Again, my world stopped, and I was overwhelmed with self-hate, regret, and fear. But I had a friend who had been praying for me. She told me she had had a dream about my baby and prophesied that the baby with a death sentence in my womb would live and not die. I clung to those words and held on to hope for dear life. After 3 months of 23-hour lockdown, the Lord opened a door for me to bond out with the condition that I complete the Abba House program. Since I had already graduated from Abba House once before and had fallen so far since then, the last thing that I wanted to do was to step foot in those doors again. I resented the people there and was filled with bitterness over the things that had been said about me. But I knew that God was there. I knew that Abba House was a place where I could get back right with Him, and maybe, just maybe, something would change. Now I want to share with you something that I learned about the power of surrender. I surrendered my pride and committed to another 15-month program. I became desperate for healing. I dove into journaling and spoke up in group sessions every chance that I got. I searched deep within myself to find whatever it was that was still broken in me for the reason that I kept wrecking my life and the life of those around me. I prayed hard, I broke down, I prayed, I cried, I confessed my sins to a room full of people so that I could be set free. I heard tough truths about myself, and I committed myself to change. There were many hard conversations and amends to be made, especially with my children. People asked me, what did God say? Did He tell you that the baby would live or die? But I refused to ask my father that question. I needed him, and I didn't want to harbor resentment towards him or misunderstand his will in such a heavy situation. I had to come to a place of complete trust, where even if my child wasn't spared, I could see God's grace in giving me the second chance at life with Him. I had to trust that restoration was still possible. The Lord gave me one rhema word: hope. On May 13, 2019, Jessalyn Alina Grace was born early. 5 days after her birth, as we were preparing to go home on hospice care, a new radiologist came into the NICU. He told us that Jessalyn was no longer a candidate for hospice, and that she indeed had a brain that needed immediate surgery. So God did it. I knew He could. I wasn't sure if He would, yet I had positioned my heart to trust in His plan. For me, faith in our good Father is the substance that miracles are made of. The world told me that I was a bipolar, worthless junkie who had lost her kids and would never get it together. But the truth is I am His beloved daughter. We are chosen, loved, spotless, and clean. We can be redeemed and made new. 2 Corinthians 5:17, therefore if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. The old has gone, the new is here. After completing the program again, I met a man that God had been preparing for me all along. We moved to Middle Georgia 3 years ago and had our youngest son together. I came back to help the program that God used so mightily in my life. Less than a month after relocating, the founder and my spiritual father, Mr. Jim Sharp, passed away. I was in shock, and there was a lot going on right then that the staff at the time weren't equipped to handle. And there's always a reason that we go through the things that we do. I didn't understand at one point in my life why I had to spend 48 months in this program, which included completing over 9 months of their ministry training program afterwards. But it was all a part of preparation for God's bigger plan. I was able to assist and bring order back during a chaotic season, and that ministry is still going on and helping broken women be made whole today. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." God tends to bring things full circle. For the past year and a half, I've had the honor of working for the same ministry that provided those life recovery Bibles I was drawn to over 10 years ago. I had the privilege of being their first ever transitional home manager and certified life coach, serving survivors of sexual exploitation. Blessings follow obedience. My willingness to serve the Lord and reach the hearts of broken women has been a dream come true. For a long time, I didn't understand how all the bad things I had gone through or the horrible mistakes that I had made could ever be made right. But now when I sit in front of a woman who's been through hell and can't see a way out, I can relate because I was her and I found a path to freedom. And it all begins with following Jesus. So there's some of my story, and thank you guys so much for letting me share. We do have a video with some pictures that goes along with it, so